given only through affliction. Shalosh matanot gedolot nitnu li Yisrael v'kol echad lo nitan ela al yedei Yisurim. So when we heard the bad news that a young boy from Beit El was killed yesterday along with two friends of his in his tank, and we said, wow, this boy visited our house about 7-8 years ago for a Shabbat. And our son El Natan was a classmate of his for 8 years. And his soul is now going up straight to Gan Eden to join the many souls, more than 800 souls of soldiers that have been taken away. Ken, welcome to Mr. Avram. We welcome you to our shiur. Welcome. Our youngster. So, gentlemen, apparently it's better off that we don't know when the Kates Hayamin, the end of days, is, because if Yaacov was ready to deliver the report, what's going to happen? Yet he's not allowed to know. And that's how our chapter 49 in Parshat Vayechi opens up. We don't know it's because of our sins he doesn't know, or because Hashem says you won't be able to take it. Some of you probably know, you learn with Rabbi Kaplan, I hope, once a week. Eiti v'lo achmini, the Gemara says in Masechet Sanhedrin, when the time of the Geula comes, some of the greatest Amoritic scholars said, let it come, but I don't want to see it. Because of the pain, the difficulty. So we're on a war of independence number 2. And there's only one way to go, and that is to win. And to win means anyone that's threatening us has to be wiped out. Whether they're in the north, the south, Judea, Samaria, we can't play around anymore. We have to take it seriously. Hopefully these words will urge us to study more, deepen our understanding, and Bezat Hashem will see the lights of the Geula with less pain and less difficulty. Amen. I wanted to share with you, before we go to the Haftarah, the subject of Yaakov Avinu, his passing away, his funeral, and his burial. In order to understand that, please see at the end of Perek Memtet Pasuk Lamed Gimel, the end of his speech to his children. Yes? You see the last pasuk of the chapter. Vayichal Yaakov letzavot et panav. He ends up, he finishes, completes his last will and testimony. Vayasof raglav al hamita. How did he know that? He collected his feet to put on his bed. He apparently feels that he's about to die. And now, what verbs do I notice in the usage of his passing away? Number 1, vayigva, and number 2, vayasef elamav. Vayigva, we're going to ask ourselves, what is the meaning of vayigva? Vayasef elamav, we have seen before in Bereshit. That's talking about that the soul remains alive, although not in the body. And now the soul is joining a unique place with other souls. And now the beginning of the chapter, Vayipol Yosef al Pnei Aviv, Vayevkala, Vayishakla, is that proper? The deceased, Yaakov Avinu, Yosef falls upon him and kisses him? Question. And then Pasuk Bet, Vayitzav Yosef et Avadav et Harofim, the Egyptian medical team, he commands them to do what? Lachanot et Aviv, to embalm his father. What is embalming? Is it permitted? Why does he do it? Vayachantu Harofim et Yisrael. The higher level, Yisrael is embalmed. How long? Pasuk Gimel, Vayimlu lo 40 yom, ki chen yimlu yemei chanutim. It's a 40-day process. Vayifku oto Mitzrayim 70 yom. Is the 70 40 plus 30? 30 days of mourning? Or is it 70 days of mourning in addition? Because we notice that when Aaron passed away, or Moshe Rabbeinu passed away in the Torah, how many days of Avelut was there? Shloshim yom. Question. Pasuk Daled. Vayavru yemei b'chito, vayidaber Yosef et Beit Paro lemor. He tells them the situation. We discussed this in our shur. He sends, though, a shaliach to the Beit Paro. to tell him, my father swore me, Aleph, when I die, I already have a burial site where in Eretz Canaan. I want to be buried there. So he's asking permission. But he adds something that we didn't notice before, that he says that my father dug it up himself. Does he get permission? Paro gives him permission. Vayomer Paro, Alei ukvoret avicha, you have permission, just like you were sworn. What does Yosef do? Vayal Yosef ligbor et aviv. Vayalu ito. Who joins? Notice this. Kol avdei Paro, the administration. Ziknei veto, all his elders. V'kol ziknei Eretz Mitzrayim. Would you imagine? A team of elders from the entire country. Who in addition, Pasuk Chet, V'chol Beit Yosef ve'echav u'veit aviv. Wow. That means Beit Yosef, the house, the wives, the children. However, the little children, Rak Tapam, and the animals, V'tzonam v'koram azvu be'eretz Goshen, they're left in Eretz Goshen. By the way, if the kids are there, what does that... What's going to have to happen? If the kids are left there, they have to come back. You can't just, let's do a quickie leaving of Eretz Mitzrayim. The kids are there. Maybe they were commanded to leave them there. Pasuk Tet, Vayalimo, Gam Rechev, Gam Parashim. Can you imagine how many chariots, horse riders? Vayamachane Kaved Meod. And now where are they traveling to? Vayavoad Goren HaAtad. Apparently it's a famous place. A threshing floor with atad, a type of bush surrounding it. Asher be'eva ayarden. What? Which way did they go? Is that the closest way or the longest way? They went to Ever HaYarden. They didn't. What would be the closest way to travel from Eretz Mitzrayim into Eretz Canaan?
South of Mitzrayim, going to the...
Which road? The coastal road. Derech Eretz Plishtim, right? Derech Eretz Yama Tichon road, right? Right off the coast. But here, where are they? East. Ever Yarden. Why? Vayispedu sham mispeid gadol v'kaved meod. Something famous. Loudspeakers, microphones. Nations apparently are gathering there. And there's a heavy days of eulogy. How long? Vayas laviv evel shivat yamim. It's a 7-day pit stop. Did Yosef think about this in advance? Did he take this into consideration? Pasuk Yud Aleph, Vayar Yosef haaretz haKananiyah te'evel. This message is a very heavy message. The Canaanite people on the western side of the bank of the Jordan River, they hear about it. Bigoran atad vayamru. Wow. Evel kaved zel Mitzrayim. The Egyptian nation is in a state of mourning because of this Yaacov. Al Kain, therefore they gave it a name. Karashma Avel Mitzrayim asher be'ever Yarden. Vayasu vanav kasher tzivum. And now we get to the burial. Vayasu oto vanav arza Canaan. Where? Me'arat stei amach. Pela, very good. And what are we told? Asher kana Avram et hasadeh l'achuzat kevra. Oh gee, I didn't know that. Really? Avram Avinu bought an achuzat kever in the Marat HaMachpelah? We all know about that. So why is it stated here? Pasuk Yudalid, and that's more or less what I wanted to read. So gentlemen, Sefer Bereshit concludes with this event, but not only. Turn to the end of the last chapter. Who passes away? You read it in advance, the Parsha? Very good. As you know, some of you, there's a mitzvah called Shemot. Shin, Mem, Vav, Taf, Shnayim Mikra Vechad Targum. We should read the Parsha twice and read the translation in Aramaic. If you can't read Rashi, it's called Shemot. Shin, Mem, Vav, Taf, Shnayim Mikra Vechad Targum. So I assume that Mr. Sorasijus has already read the Parsha once, if not twice. What you can rely upon, as the Shulchan Aruch says, the reading of the Torah on Shabbat. But the other you should read at least by yourself. So, if I ask you, Chumash Bereshit ends with the passing away of? Yosef, right? The death of Yosef. By the way, is he embalmed? Yes. He's embalmed, and he's placed inside a coffin, and he's left where? In Mitzrayim. That's what it states. And he is how old? 110 years old. If I ask you, Zechariah, on the course of how many psukim do we find out about the passing away of Yosef, his embalming, and placed inside Aron, how many psukim does the Torah give? One pasuk. How many words? How many words? Get it.
11.
Look at the last pasuk, gentlemen. 11 words. You're like Ezra Sofer. Tonight is the yortzeit also of Ezra Sofer, right? Asra b'tevet. Why is he called a Sofer? He counted the words. Now, the passing away of, gentlemen, look at me. The passing away of Yaakov, his mourning, the embalming, the funeral, the burial of the Abba Yaakov Avinu, one pasuk, 14 psukim. Who's the star of this parsha? Yosef or Yaakov? Who is the Hebrew? The hero, the Hebraic hero in the eyes of Egyptian society. Who saved the Egyptian world of 5 years of famine? Yaakov. Yaakov arrived in the second year. The Midrash tells us, finito. That was the end of the famine, 5 years early. Okay? Whereas Yosef, with all his great qualities and intelligence, and he lives for 110 years, Yosef lives, he planned out how to save the Egyptian economy. Now, this long description that we just saw by Yaakov Avinu, on Yaakov Avinu, is it justified? Why is it so long? Why is it so detailed? What is the objective of the Torah in giving us this long description? Is there a messer, a lesson, a musar, a skill for us that we can learn from here? So I want to share you ideas of our Rishonim and Achronim that's brought down in the wonderful sefer of my dear father-in-law, Rav Shalom Horovitz Shlita. And he explains the following. As far as Avraham and Yitzchak and now Yaakov is concerned, we have no greater description of a passing away, a funeral like Yaakov Avinu. Everyone else is very short. One pasuk or two for Avraham Avinu, one or two pasukim for Yitzchak, and that's it. What idea is hidden here? We're now coming to the end of Chumash Bereshit. We're coming to the finale of the three Avot, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. These wonderful, fantastic superstars, leaders, forerunners of what's going to be the Jewish people, our nation. Now, the passing away of Yaakov is now putting an end to this spiritual climb. The climb of the Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Okay? Some of them had difficult lives, like Yaakov Avinu, very difficult. Avraham Avinu, his life was endangered by Nimrod, thrown into the furnace of fire. Yet, each of the three made an objective in life. I'm going to spread the faith of one God. God, who is supreme power, who is infinite, who is not limited whatsoever. He's one and only in all of our creation. Therefore, what did they do during their lifetimes? They educated. They spread the word. And they did a lot of chesed. In a world that's totally full of idolatry. The world doesn't see the big picture. They see a God of this, a separate God of that, a power of this. They see many, many powers in the world, but all of their ideas is not united. Okay? Therefore, take into account that Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are living in a world that's so full of people idolizing the power of the moon, the power of the sun, the power of rain, the power of the vegetative, and so on and so forth. This may be caused to the three Avot even to work harder in spreading the belief in one God. And therefore now, Yaakov Avinu, at his death, maybe the long description is coming to tell us what a Kiddush Hashem. Yaakov Avinu, living in Eretz Canaan, before then, fleeing from Esav by Lavan. And now, 17 years in Eretz Mitzrayim, he's sanctifying God's name. He doesn't budge from his belief. He doesn't budge from his midot and so on and so forth. And therefore, this Yeshiva Bach, is a Yeshiva Bach Yaakov Avinu or not? What is he called? What is he nicknamed? Ish Tam Yoshev Oalim. Beautiful. He was a Yeshiva Bachar. Okay? Until the age of 77 years old, the Midrash tells us, he was the Gedol Ador. He was studying and studying, man full of power, spiritual power, and he's crowned. He's the Gadol. You know, in the world, there are people that are called Gadol. Alexander Hagadol, Antiochus Hagadol. Why? Because they captured many lands. Yaakov Avinu, did he capture one land? No. So why is he the Gadol of all the three Avot? Of faith. That's right. He was able to spread Emunah Gedola and show it in life by doing chesed, tzedakah, mishpat, and so on. So my dear friends, the actual presence of Yaakov Avinu in Mitzrayim for 17 years, the last 17 years of his life, okay, apparently caused a lot of blessing to the Egyptian people, to the Egyptian economy, to the extent that when he dies, like in America or the Goyish countries, what do they do when a prominent person passes away? What do they do to the flag? Do you know this custom in the world? Half staff. What is it called? Half staff? Half mast? M-A-S-T? Okay. When there's a national passing away, the country feels it. This is what's happening in Mitzrayim. In Mitzrayim, there is a period of mourning and sorrow for all of the Egyptian people. They're crying and they're crying. For how many days? At least 70 days we see here. 40 for embalming, 30 for crying. We've never seen such a thing to that extent. So apparently it's clear to us what the Midrash says, that when Yaakov arrives on the scene, what ended? The years of famine ended for the Egyptian economy 5 years in advance. And therefore people are appreciative. People are sensitive now that Yaakov is gone, and they want to feel for the loss of Yaakov Avinu. Now, what did we notice? That up until his passing away, Yaakov spoke. His mind was clear. He didn't suffer from this disease or another disease. Okay? In this last chapter, he issues his last will and testament, tzava'ah. He, according to order, gives blessings to each of his sons, and he concludes with the clear instructions where he's going to be buried. And when he passes away, he puts his feet on the bed, as we saw, and then we see two stages in his passing away. Number one, vayigva, and number two, what was the next word? Vayasef el amav. Is that the same thing by Avram and Yitzchak? No. By Avram and Yitzchak, we see three parts of the process. We see gvia, we see mita, and we see aseifa ela'am. I repeat. By Avram and Yitzchak, there is gvia, expiration. There is mita, which we don't see here. Am I right or not? Does the word vayamot appear and he died? Yes or no?
That's why Joseph is there.
Don't spill the beans yet. 1 second, this is number 2. Thanks to Avram, Yisrael. Gentlemen, Vayamot does not appear here. Usually, when we talk about Givia expiring, we're talking about the neshama leaving the body. The body no longer functions, that's Vayigva. The neshama leaves and exits the body. Whereas, what is Vayamot and death? That usually expresses the process of decay in the body. Meaning, when a person passes away, the tissues, the cells, lose its vitality, which later causes decay of the physical body. Okay? And then the body just, with years, withers away. And that's how the body's going back into the earth, going back to its original situation. So the word mita, which is as if the death of the cells and the tissues, which helps cause the decay, this doesn't appear by Yaakov. It does appear by Avraham and Yitzchak. But the third one, Le'asef Elamav, is apparently the neshama of the deceased, now going up to the world of souls and going into the family of souls, whatever level he's worthy of. In other words, if he, in this lifetime, learned so much Torah, did so much chesed, he gets to this level. He learned even more and did more chesed, he gets to a higher level. So we ask ourselves, Vayamot, why didn't the Torah write it by Yaakov Avinu like it did by Avraham and Yitzchak? Od Avinu Chai, Od Avinu Chai, Od Avinu, Od Avinu, Od Avinu. Where did we get this term? Od Avinu Chai. If the language mita, death, does not appear by Yaakov Avinu, then it'll explain to us the fact that when Yaakov is embalmed, okay, that when he's embalmed, what did not happen apparently? A process of decay did not yet begin, like it does begin maybe by the others that their bodies expire. Now, that's a possible explanation in the Pshat. Chazal, however, did not want to say that whatsoever. Chazal wanted to say that, by Yaakov Avinu, there is no decay in his body. Just like there was no decay in the bodies of Avraham and Yitzchak, even though that said there, Vayamot. According to Chazal, Vayamot, and he died, is not stated by Yaakov Avinu because the Gemara says in Masechet Tanit, quote, Yaakov Avinu lo mate. He didn't die. Give me a break. What do you mean into that? We know that he's buried in Marat HaMachpelah. Rabbi Yitzchak, in the Gemara, when he's asked about this Gemara, Yaakov Avinu didn't die. Come on, thousands of people eulogized him. So many people accompanied him. Why did they embalm him? Why, if he didn't die, then why was he buried? What does Rabbi Yitzchak answer in the Gemara? Quote, Ma zar'o b'chayim, af hu b'chayim. Just like the seed of Yaakov, the children, the grandchildren, the nation of Yaakov is alive, so too is he alive. In other words, all of the 12 children who were tzaddikim gedolim, they continued, they brought life, and the ones thereafter also brought life. Yaakov Avinu, that left, we call it a mita shlema, a complete bed. All 12 of his kids are tzaddikim. Okay? It's as if death did not touch upon him. In other words, his fabulous life goes on because of his children. And therefore, there's a kind of sense, Od Avinu Chai. When we say Am Yisrael Chai v'Od Avinu Chai, that's because the children of Yaakov Avinu went on and continued the heritage. Yesterday, someone brought to my attention, there's a new candidate for the Prime Minister of Canada. I don't know if you saw the clip. And he speaks wonderfully about the state of Israel, the Jewish people, the eternity of Israel, how nations are, during the periods of all the centuries, try to wipe out the Jewish people, yet they can't. The Jewish people are alive. When he came to visit Israel and he saw them, what they're made out of, how special they are, it was really Kiddush Hashem. I forgot what his name is, but you can find it on the YouTube. because I think the present prime minister retired or resigned is the proper word. Okay, so the Jewish people, the nations of the world, see the eternity of the Jewish people, and now we have to try to understand what is this embalming. Yosef commands to the doctors to embalm Yaakov. Was Yitzchak Avinu embalmed? No. Was Avram Avinu embalmed? Either not. First, we'll explain in a moment what is embalming. But the question is, why is it done? Why is it done? There's no wonder of all the sons that have the ability to order to have Yosef, Yaakov embalmed, it can only be Yosef. Who do you think is crying most of all the children on the passing away? Who do you think is crying most?
Yosef.
Why?
He didn't see his father
He didn't see his father for 17 years. Could it be that he's a little emotional? That he's so sorry, and that maybe he's losing his senses of proper behavior, and therefore he goes and he kisses his father? We don't do that after his father passes away. No one goes ahead and kisses a father. Maybe he feels emotionally guilty that his behavior caused what it caused. That's what he feels maybe. And therefore he can't control himself emotionally. And the tsar is so great that, for 22 years I caused my father so much trouble because of my actions. It could be. But why does he command the embalming of his father? You should know, Chazal do not save criticism. Their criticism is not saved. They hand it out. Solicit their criticism to Yosef HaTzadik. Of all scholars, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he's quoted that why did Yosef die the youngest of all the brothers? Of all the sons of Yaakov, who died first? Yosef. Why? Because he ordered his father to be embalmed. That's what the Midrash says in Breshit Rabbah. In other words, according to this words of Chazal, Hashem is very strict on Yosef. He wants to what? Embalming usually is an idea, a medical idea, to inject certain medical liquids into the body of the deceased in order to harden the body, in order to preserve the body from decay. That's what Chanita, that's what embalming is about. And Chazal say, what's the matter? Don't you know that Avram and Yitzchak, decay, physical decay does not have control over them? So too, Yaakov Avinu, the decay of his body will not come about. And you, Yosef, should have what? Relied on the power of Yaakov Avinu even after his death, that his body would be preserved from decay, just like what happened to the bodies of Avraham and Yitzchak. By the way, how do we know about what happened to Avraham and Yitzchak? Chazal told us. How does Chazal know? God revealed it in the oral Torah. Summary. According to Chazal, Yosef was mistaken. He should have had faith in God that no decay will come to the body of his father, just like no decay came to Avraham and Yitzchak. Yes, sir.
Is that why we are not allowed to do embalming of
Right. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that point in a moment. So, gentlemen.
And another.
Yes.
Maybe the reason why he did it.
Maybe what?
Maybe one of the reasons that he did embalm his father is because they used to do it in Egypt.
Oh.
It was
The mummies. Right. So that's the point there. This technique of him, right? Does anyone know in Jewish culture, in North America, South America, Europe, the Jews embalm the bodies? No. Nachon? So this was an ancient practice of Egyptian culture. This technique of embalming the bodies of the dead in Mitzrayim was very developed, was very technological, and they did it to the great leaders, the emperors, the kings, the leaders of the Egyptian nation, and it was part of the Egyptian doctrine, part of Egyptian religion, okay, about the body and the soul of the Egyptian people. What did they believe? They believed that the body is the unique part of mankind, and therefore the body should be preserved. The body should have embalming, and the body should remain intact as it was at the end of its living period. And it would last for thousands of years. And then they believed in the future the neshama will come back to the body that's preserved. Okay? L'umat haguf, okay? As opposed to the body, the neshama of the deceased will just go from body to body, maybe even from human bodies to animals, without guardianship, without any special essence. The neshama is not the most important thing. Let it float, let it go away. Of course, the approach of Judaism and Torah is just the opposite, right? Just the opposite. In Judaism, is there or not significance to the body after the soul leaves the body? Yes or no?
Yes.
What do you mean?
We believe the
Why? We believe that the body will wither away and rejoin the earth from which it was created from. But we don't open up the body and wash it and shampoo it after. So therefore, we believe there's no significance to the body after the exit of the soul. Well, that's because there was holiness to the body that right now the soul is about to leave. Okay? The soul is about to leave. And therefore, the process, we believe that it's even a mitzvah to speedily bring the dead to burial. And some of you may even know there's a minhag in Yerushalayim that there's no halanat hamet. Are you aware of that? We don't lodge the body overnight. Okay, I've been to funerals at weird hours of the night because of this holy Kabbalistic custom that we don't want to lodge overnight the body, and therefore funerals take place here in the course of the night. So, in summary, 1 second. Who is the most important essence? The soul. That's the most important essence. That's the ikar, the fundamental part of man. And therefore, inside the soul is retained your scoreboard, all the credits of the mitzvot, your Torah study, all the good things that you did in your life are retained inside the soul. And therefore, we have no matter to go ahead and embalm the body. And that explains why Chazal had a wonder, had such a bikoret, criticism of what Yosef did. We'll talk about in a moment, how can Yosef justify it? What do you want to say, Avram?
I just wanted to give a credit to Joseph, since he had to take the journey, long journey to Eretz Israel to bury him. So not for the body to be sort of start to Judah or something. Imagine.
Very nice. There are several justifications, explanations by the Rishonim and Chazal why Yosef did perhaps the right thing. Number one, we could say that he was so full of sorrow that it brought him to this mistake. He was so emotionally taken by the loss of his father more than any other person that he came to make a mistake emotionally and ordered the embalming. Number two, look, sometimes you have to be diplomatic and don't rock the boat. Yosef is a leader, but inside Egyptian culture. He's a leader, but inside the Egyptian monarchy. and he cannot do something that might insult the Egyptian law or Egyptian religion that is so widespread. Because had he done something in opposition to what's accepted, could have he endangered the permit, the green light that he received from Paro to bring his father out and bury him in Hebron? Maybe that would have negated the green light, the permit. Another thing is what Avram says. Yosef understood that this, what is it called, a funeral procession? Is that the proper word? Procession? He foresaw this procession is going to take him through several nations, lands. It's going to take weeks and weeks for burial, and the decay of the body could cause a very terrible bizayon to the body of Yosef, of Yaakov Avinu. Nachon, by Avram and Yitzchak, decay did not control the body. But maybe that's the reason is, wasn't Avram brought to burial right away? Wasn't Yitzchak brought to burial right away? But here, Yaakov is going to be brought to burial after weeks of transporting his body from one place to the other place. And maybe it's not proper of the Kedusha of Marat HaMachpelah to bury there something that has such a terrible odor. One last point to mention about the embalming. Yaakov Avinu himself feared that he would be idolized. Yaakov would turn into a source of avodah zarah. Why? Because in his merit, the famine ended in the second year upon his arrival. 5 years earlier than it should have happened. Okay? If the Egyptians, my father-in-law writes the following, Rav Horowitz, he writes, had the Egyptians saw that Yaakov Avinu, wow, no embalming, no decay, and it happens for such a long time, what are they going to think? Yaakov is a god. In other words, the opposite objective. Yosef is saying, I want to prevent from the Egyptians turning a Yaakov Avinu into an idol. Because if they see without embalming, his body doesn't stink, and no decay happens to his body, certainly they'll be strengthened in their idea. We have to idolize him. We have to make him into an idol. And maybe he's going to, we can't bring him back to Hebron. He's an idol. We idolize him. Okay? We're going to put a sign, Yaakov Avinu of the Hebrews. He's our leader. Let's bow down to him. And all these things and so on and so forth. According to this last opinion, Yosef didn't make a mistake whatsoever. Okay? And he wasn't punished for this. Except for the opinion that says in Chazal that he died the earliest of all his brothers because of the embalming. One more point regarding the permit to bury him. Yaakov Avinu, after he dies, Yosef does not go by himself and ask for the permit to bury him in Hebron. Rather, he sends shlichim to the king. It could be, at that time, what do you think the son is wearing right after the father dies? Torn clothing. Sackcloth. Okay? Why? He's in mourning for the passing away of his father. Can you go before the king of Egypt wearing sackcloth or torn clothing? No. So maybe that explains why he sends a shaliach to Paro. However, he also knows it's a risky thing. If we bury him back in the Eretz Canaan, it could be this will be an insult to the Egyptian monarchy and so on and so forth. Now, he's afraid that Paro will still say no. Therefore, let me send shlichim. And if the answer is no, then maybe I will go myself, knock on the table, and say, we have to have him brought back. Now, the levaya, the actual funeral that's bringing him, Yosef is in charge of the levaya. As you see, Vayal Yosef, Vayal Ito, Vayal Imo. Yosef is leading this big funeral procession, and instead of going like the coastal road that you said, they're going the longer way through the desert. Okay? It sounds like the same path the Jewish people take when we come out of Mitzrayim, that we also go through the desert and go to Ever HaYarden. And there, the procession stops on Ever Yarden, some say it's really the western side of Ever, not the eastern side, a place called Goren HaAtad, and maybe nations there are eulogizing. And apparently in Midrash, there's a lot of Midrash to talk about it, but it's a long road and still a long trip to get to Marat HaMachpelah. Why are we told, again, where is Marat HaMachpelah? In Eretz Canaan. Who is it purchased from? How many years has Yaakov not been in Eretz Canaan? 17 years. There might people think, your ownership, your right of ownership is what? Is gone. You guys don't know what you're talking about. No, it's very clear. Marat HaMachpelah, on this side of Eretz Canaan, in the city of Hebron. We purchased it from Ephron HaChiti. There's no doubt that it belongs to us. And we see here a lengthy matter about the burial. That's what I wanted to share here. I want to now go, with your permission, to the Haftarah. Bevakasha. You also have tissues? I also have tissues. Yours are better. Oh, yours are white. Thank you. Ushaftem mayim b'sason. What do we have here, gentlemen, as far as, thank you, the passing away of David? Why is this chapter chosen for the Haftarah of Parshat Vayechi? It's quite obvious. Just like Yaakov Avinu is passing away in our Parsha, here, who's passing away? David. And when Yaakov calls, senses his death is coming, who does he call?
His sons.
All his sons. And all his sons come. Here, what happens here, gentlemen? So you can say that's the common denominator. We call this a tzava'ah, last will and testimony, just like Yaakov called his children. So too does David HaMelech call his children. However, what's the difference between the two leaders? What's the difference here? By Yaakov Avinu, all the children come. Here, by David HaMelech, what happens? All the hope of the next generation is dependent upon one son and one son only. One son is continuing the mif'al, the great industry of spiritual leadership, and that is Shlomo. He is the only one called here. So you can say that is the difference and the reason why we're reading this in the Shabbat. However, some of the great commentators point out that there's something above and beyond. You said that by Yaakov, everyone's together, right? He kaftu, there was a kibbutz, there's a collection, the bracha is to the cloud, from the cloud to each and every one of the sons. So all the sons are standing next to the bed of Yaakov Avinu. Is there fraternity? Sure. Solidarity? Absolutely. Is there love? Absolutely. Are they together? No doubt about it. Yaakov Avinu merits to see all 12 of his children in the derech. Big time. They're superstars. Okay? And of course, one has reached even the highest level, and that is Yosef. He is the Mishneh Lamelech. Very good. I'm happy you're learning Hebrew. Mishneh Lamelech. He's number 2 to the king. And Yosef, wow, must be so happy that his father is happy that he saw him for the last 17 years of the life. However, when you open up Sefer Melachim and you read these first 2 chapters, that here we learn about David at the end of his life. Yaakov had tranquility at the end of his life. Yaakov was very solemn. There was no sadness. There was no threat. There was no suspense. Whereas here, David before his death, Does he have tranquility? No. Does he have any sense of solidarity? Not at all. In his backyard, his son is plotting to take over. Okay? And he can't even move. He's not even aware what's going on. He's on his deathbed. He's sick. His body cannot preserve its regular temperature. Correct? And a while ago, David already made a swear, an oath. To which son?
Shlomo.
That what will Shlomo receive? Okay, he will receive the kingdom. Right now, David is, before our Haftarah, David's not aware what's going on. There's a coup d'etat, right? Happening in his backyard here in the city of David. Okay? And one of his sons would like to grab the kingdom by himself. Okay. There was a plan with Shlomo, Bathsheba, and the prophet called Natan, the prophet, in chapter 1. And there, they were able to get the attention of David that he has to pronounce publicly that Shlomo will be the king. We can't rely on his last will of testimony just between he and the people next to him right now. It has to be pronounced. It has to be on the PA system with a megaphone. Who has to be king? Okay? And therefore, in order for David to strengthen the base, that his son will be the king when he goes away, when he passes away to the world of truth, he has to give very clear instructions what has to be done. So here you see, for instance, look at which pasuk is V'gamata yadata regarding Yoav ben Tzuria. Do you see it? Pasuk, hey, instructions about David's former defense minister, Yoav ben Tzuria. If you know, Tzuria is his sister. Yoav is David's nephew. Okay? Shabbat Shalom, sir. Yoav was a very tough cookie, very independent actor. He eliminated 2 ministers of war, Avner ben Ner and Amasa ben Yeter. He took the law into his own hands, and therefore, Shlomo, you can't allow Yoav to die a natural death. You have to be creative. You have to find a way to cause that he'll be taken care of. It's interesting. On the one hand, he doesn't tell him how to do it. I rely on your wisdom. You know how to do it. So every time, want to just lower the heat a little? You can't. Every time that David wanted to make peace with the tribe of Binyamin, Yoav foiled those attempts. And therefore, he mixed war with peace. When David wanted to make peacetime with all the tribes, Yoav caused trouble. Number 2, Pasuk Zayin. As far as rewarding people, Livnei Varzilai Giladi. Why should chesed be done to the people of these Giladi people on the other side? What did they do, gentlemen?
They saved his life.
They saved his life. They supported him, gave him food. And therefore, they have to be rewarded. And third, in Pasuk Chet, Shimi ben Geula. He was a noble leader from the Binyamin tribe. However, when David was fleeing from his palace, going down the Judean desert in the Benjamin area, and on his way out, Shimi ben Geula was easy to curse David, to throw pebbles at him. Yet David said, I'm not going to do din with you. David showed his great humility, his great accepting din. Maybe God wants me to be punished this way. However, anyone that curses the king, anyone that throws pebbles at the king, that is a felony. It's a major capital crime. And therefore, he leaves instructions. What has to be done? Al tinakeu, verse 9. You make sure that he does not He's not cleaned out. He's not absolved from judgment, and so on and so forth. So, very interesting. If we compare the end of life of David HaMelech to the end of life, start hinting this out. What is it saying here? To the end of Shlomo HaMelech's, David HaMelech's life, we see that in order for David to die and to he be feeling, it's part of it, yes, in order for him to feel a matter of solemnness, a matter of inner peace, he leaves harsh instructions. Political, security instructions to the closest people that have to take care, that were close to David. Yoav, a tragic ending has to happen to Shimi ben Gera, and so on. So we see similarity, last will and testimony, yet a big difference. David, with all his greatness, he had a lot of difficulties, and therefore he leaves these orders for them to do. A very famous Gemara regarding Yaakov Avinu. Some of you, do you all know the source of Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto L'Olam Va'ed? Yes?
Yes.
The famous Gemara in Masechet Pesachim, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. When the opening of the chapter in Mem Tet, and Yaakov calls his children and says, collect together, I want to tell you, and we opened up the shore that Yaakov wanted to reveal what's going to happen in the end of days, and God took the Shekhinah away from him. Wow, Yaakov said, why did God take the Shekhinah away from me? Maybe one of my children messed up. Maybe one of my kids went off of the derech. Let me see, let me go back to Avram Avinu. Did Avram Avinu, all his children went on the derech or went off the... Who went off? Huh? Yishmael. So maybe I'm like I'm Avram Avinu. One of the kids didn't go on the derech. Or maybe I'm like Yitzchak. Did Yitzchak have all his children go on the derech, or someone went off the derech? Who went off? Esav. He says to his children, Shema Yisrael. I'm sorry. The children say to the Abba Yaakov, Shema Yisrael. Who's Yisrael? Yaakov Avinu. No, we're okay. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Again, he's on his deathbed. His 12 kids are there. And he says, wow, maybe one of you guys went off of the derech, like Avram Avinu, like Yitzchak Avinu's kids. They say, no, Abba, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. They all accepted upon themselves, Ol Malchut Shamayim, the yoke of heaven. Wow. And they said, Kishem she'ein bilibcha el echad, kach ein bilibenu el echad. Abba, just like you in your heart, you believe in one God, we also believe in one God. Wow. Was Yaakov happy at that moment? He says, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. You hear this, Chananel? This is what Yaakov Avinu answered his children. Wow, bless the Holy Lord in His honor, Leolam Va'ed. Then the Chazal say, what should we do? When we reach Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad twice a day, a third at Kriyat Shema at bedtime, should we say Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto? Moshe Rabbeinu, I'd like to ask you a question. Do you remember when you wrote Shema Yisrael? Yeah, in Chumash Devarim, absolutely. Did you write Baruch Shem Kivod in Chumash Devarim? What did Moshe Rabbeinu answer me? He didn't. So maybe we shouldn't say it. But our father, Yaakov Avinu, did say it. We're in a dilemma. Should we, do you understand the question? No, or not? Should we act like Moshe Rabbeinu acted? He didn't say Baruch Shem Kivod, just said Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. But on the other hand, Yaakov Avinu did say it. Chazal say, let's make peace with everyone. Let's make a compromise. We'll say it, but we'll whisper. We'll say, but we're going to whisper. Okay? That's the solution that they did. My dear friends, Yaakov Avinu.
Exemption is you have to work on.
You're right. Exception. Very good, Amram. Yaakov and his children are the pinnacle of the basis of faith in one God. Yaakov Avinu is the summary of, the cook would say, Yaakov Avinu is the summary of Avram and Yitzchak. He reached heights that no one else reached. And therefore, not by mere instance, the Maharal of Prague, in his Sefer Netivot Shalom, Netivot Olam, Netivot Shalom is the Admor of Slonim, in his book on the chapter Netiv Avodah, the path of serving God, he says the deepening of the faith in one God is coming through Yaakov and his 12 sons, because Yaakov Avinu was the first one really to pronounce the globality of Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu. On the one hand, he's a Yud Kei Vav Kei. He exists and will exist and did exist and exists now. But on the other hand, Elokeinu, he's special for us, for the Hebrews, and he's Echad. He's undivided. There's no limits to his power, to his existence, to his place. He's everywhere, all-powerful, never-ending. Therefore, it's worthy that Yaakov Avinu and his sons, they indoctrinated to us the emunah be'el echad. And this is continued through the generations until the troubles in Mitzrayim. When we come out of Mitzrayim, we're marched up to Har Sinai. So Yaakov Avinu, that Chazal say that the spiritual form of God's throne is engraved in him. The throne of God is opposite Yaakov Avinu. Why? Because the virtue of Yaakov Avinu is emunah be'el echad on its highest level. And therefore, each year we learn about Yaakov Avinu, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and he's the summary. For the first time in the history of the three Avot, all the children of the forefather are tzaddikim, superstars, spreading prophecy, spreading the light of goodness of God. And that's our job. Why do we learn? Why do we add so much time to learn Torah, to learn the pnimiyut of who the Avot are? Because that's who we are. We strive from them. We nurture from the faith of the Avot to where we're going. And that's how we have to build ourselves. We have to learn their midot, learn their love of God, the love of their fellow Hebrew, and do what we have to do for our nation. And now, in a time of war, certainly we have to do as much as possible. I just put on the bulletin board. My wife gets an updated list from the hospitals of Israel for the soldiers that are most severely injured. There's a list on top for those most severely injured, and then there's a list on the bottom for those that have eye injuries, which are very, very difficult. Please take a few. Write them down. Put it in your siddur. Pray for them, for their refuah. Those are the most severely injured. And B'ezrat Hashem, we sing a lot of miracles. My wife gets reports about so many miracles. He went through this unbelievable operation. He's now in rehab. He's off of this critical list. There's so many. Our prayers are being answered, but we need more. So B'ezrat Hashem, may these words be L'ilui Nishmat, those three boys that were killed yesterday. L'ilui Nishmat, all the soldiers. And L'ilui Nishmat, my father, Alta Yaakov ben Zev, and my grandfather Zev ben Shlomo Aaron. Amen. Ken Yiratzal. Shakach, gentlemen.